Welcome on into the Cleveland Browns Report by Chat Sports. Matthew Peterson here, recapping and breaking down the Browns depth charts after free agency and going into the NFL draft so we can kind of identify what the needs are for this team still and where things stand after a whole bunch of additions and subtractions during free agency. Now, quick full disclosure, I am filming this video on Monday afternoon. That's because I have some PTO later this week with a friend visiting me. So if anything changes, just kind of roll with the punches. But let's get right into it, starting with the quarterback room, where you've got Deshaun Watson, Jameis Winston, Tyler Huntley, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I think this fan base and just Browns fans in general, of course, are just so used to having to bicker and fight and argue over the starting quarterback that when that question is answered, we just move on to the backup quarterback, right? One of the biggest arguments this offseason has been over Jameis Winston over Joe Flacco. Is that what we've gotten to? Will we have to argue over the backup quarterback because we have nothing else to fight over? I'm okay with this Browns quarterback room. Moving on to the running back room now. Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford, Deontay Foreman, and Nyheim Hines ahead of some, returning players like Pierre Strong Jr. and John Kelly. Of course, the elephant in the room here is, when will Nick Chubb return? If Nick Chubb misses the first 4 weeks of the season, then yeah, I think you can probably tread water with Deontay Foreman, Jerome Ford, and Nyheim Hines. If he misses the first 8 weeks, 10 weeks of the season, he did get surgery in November after all, and if it is a 12-month recovery, then you may be in a bit of a sticky situation because you've got Jerome Ford, who I think showed us last year that he's just not going to be an RB1. I mean, does he have a career as a backup running back? Sure. But does he have a career as a team's workhorse back? No, I don't believe he does. Then you got Deontay Foreman, who 2 seasons ago with the Panthers was in that role, right? 200-plus carries, 914 yards, 4.5 yards a pop, 5 touchdowns. Wasn't even slated to be that team starter. He also has a reunion with Deshaun Watson, where those two were together in Houston to begin their careers. Last year with the Bears, he battled an ankle injury. He was a healthy scratch at the end of the year, but 425 yards, 4 touchdowns. He had some good stretches and some good games with the Bears last year. And then you have Nyheim Hines, who missed all of 2023 after a very unfortunate boating accident going into the season. Before that, he was with the Colts after being traded there from Buffalo in that Zach Moss swap. And he's always been a receiving back, right? Last year, the guy had 33 rushing yards compared to 240, or 2 years ago, I should say, compared to 241 receiving yards. So Hines is not an in-between the tackles kind of player. So I think this Browns running back room can be serviceable for a month or so. I don't think it's built to last if you need 8 to 10 weeks out of these guys before Nick Chubb returns. And even when Chubb does return, who's to say he'll be even close to 100%? Often we see running backs come back from these injuries, and that first year back, they're kind of a shell of themselves, right? Saquon Barkley comes to mind. Javonte Williams for the Broncos. Both players that suffered like very serious injuries, and go look at their numbers the next year. They weren't back to what they were pre-injury. So for me, I've got my concerns over this running back room if they have to lean on them for a half or more of the season. But at the same time, if there is a player to just kick this rehab's ass, it would be Batman. So should the Browns go running back at pick number 54? I don't want to waste the Browns' only top 55 pick, right? They're the last team to pick in this draft. So if there's not a good running back that the Browns are confident in, I'm not about to sign off on just taking any running back just for the sake of taking a running back. But if there is a back that the Browns feel like could be a big contributor to them, then the more the merrier, is my opinion, when it comes to the Browns running back committee until Nick Chubb returns, right? You can't guarantee that Foreman, Ford, and Hines are all going to be healthy. So it can't hurt to already have a good backup plan in place. Plus, get some competition going. Let the cream rise to the top, right? And if that's a rookie, or if that's Ford or Foreman or Hines, whoever it may be, I say bring them on. All right, let's move on to the wide receiver room now. Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore. This room is pretty open and shut. I do think there is a good chunk of the fan base that would like to see them add to this room in the draft. And listen, I was in the similar camp until they traded for Jerry Jeudy. And then you start just looking at the room going, you've got Cooper, Jeudy, Moore. I mean, right off the top, 3 guys the Browns traded for, right? Players that the Browns had meetings about and decided, let's give up currency, draft picks, to get them to Cleveland. So you know this team has high regards and high expectations for all 3 of those players. Not guys that they acquired from the previous regime, not players they sauced a cheap 1-year or 2-year contract to, but guys they went after and traded for. So right off the bat, I've got 3 players that I think the Browns have a big role for in 2024. Then you toss in that they drafted Cedric Tillman and David Bell the last 2 years in rounds 3 of the draft. So clearly players the Browns think have something special in them. Otherwise, they wouldn't have used a round 3 draft pick on. So for that reason, I don't think you're going to see the Browns go wide receiver at 54 unless someone falls to them that they had no business being at pick 54 and Cleveland just can't pass on. So for me, I think the Browns are content with rolling into 2024 with a wide receiver room of 3 guys they traded for and 2 guys they used 3rd-round picks on. Let's move on to the tight end room now. You got David Njoku, Jordan Akins, Giovanni Ricci, all-time Italian name, and then Zaire Mitchell-Payton. Obviously, this room is pretty top-heavy, right? Ricci is more of a fullback. I think he might be the next Nick Harris of this team. Probably a little bit smaller than him, though. But a lot of weight is going to fall on David Njoku's shoulders. And that's not a bad time because he comes off a career year. 81 grabs, 882 yards, 6 touchdowns. He really got hot towards the second half of the season, developed a great chemistry with Joe Flacco. Now he's got to develop that chemistry with Deshaun Watson. As for the 5 guys up front, I've got Jedrick Wills, Joel Petonio, Ethan Posick, Wyatt Teller, and I'm going to put Jack Conklin at the starting right tackle position. Maybe it's a true camp battle between him and DeJuan Jones, but I think if both guys are 100% on the first day of training camp and Kevin Stefanski says, I want the ones on the field, I think you're going to see Jack Conklin trot out with the rest of the offensive line. Now, if he's not 100% and DeJuan Jones is, keep in mind, both guys suffered season-ending injuries last year, and Jones starts kicking ass to begin training camp, and he's, holding his own against Myles Garrett, which no one does, and I wouldn't be, shocked if the Browns right at the hot hand. But for now, I think it's Conklin's job to lose again. And unfortunately, that could be because of injury. Now, before we get on to the defensive side of this team, make sure to join our growing Browns YouTube community here. We are almost at 34,000 subscribers, less than 100 away. So if you have not subscribed yet, I invite you to go ahead and do so. Let's get on to the defensive line now. You've got Myles Garrett, Dalvin Tomlinson. I'm going to put Shelby Harris at the starting defensive tackle role, replacing Jordan Elliott, and then Za'Darius Smith. And behind them, your pass rushing rotation features Okoronkwo, Alex Wright, 2 guys that saw a lot of snaps last season, more so Okoronkwo. Isaiah McGuire, an early day 3 pick from 2023. He may be in for a larger role this upcoming season. And then you've got some smaller players kind of battling for a practice squad spot. But it's that interior defensive line and also some of the re-signings and new additions, right? Za'Darius Smith comes back along with Shelby Harris and Mo Hurst, who is just like the heart and soul of this locker room when it comes to humor. And then Quinton Jefferson comes over from the Jets after a career-high 6-sack season for, I think, 3rd and obvious passing situations where the Browns want to get Smith, Garrett, Jefferson, and Okoronkwo, 3 true pass rushers, and then 1 defensive tackle with some pass rushing upside to their game. Now, the linebacker room, I think you have JOK, Jordan Hicks, and Devin Bush penciled in as your starters. JOK and Hicks aren't going anywhere. They are more of a Sharpie. Devin Bush, on the other hand, he could very well be competing for a starting role with maybe a rookie. But the Jordan Hicks signing, I think it's a solid one. It's hard to replace the leadership element of what Anthony Walker brought to this team. And you can look at these stats and you can see, 4 straight years of 100+ tackles. And that's great and all. I'm not trying to take anything away from Hicks, but what's not on there is how much this defense rallied around Anthony Walker and how big of a leader he was and how important he was to that defense. So I think the bar is pretty high for Hicks, but I think he has shown he is a reliable run-stopping middle linebacker, and that's really what I'm asking for out of this guy, right? You've got playmakers in Myles Garrett and Za'Darius Smith, Denzel Ward, Martin Emerson, Grant Delpit. Let them get the sacks, the interceptions, the forced fumbles. I need Jordan Hicks on 3rd and 4 to keep a running back at 2 yards and make it 4th and 2 and get off the field. That is his job. Devin Bush, he comes over with some work to do, right? Former first-round pick by the Steelers, went over to Seattle last year, really didn't impress. I mean, look at the last 2 seasons. No sacks, no forced fumbles, no interceptions. He was picked 10th overall to make plays. He hasn't made any plays in a long time, which is why I am very much on board with seeing that 54th overall pick, if available, be used on the Texas A&M linebacker Edgerrin Cooper. I think this linebacker room needs a little bit of a youth reset. You've got JOK entering a contract year. What if the Browns decide we don't have him in the budget for him, which I do not want to see happen, but we do have to live in a world where, cap casualties exist. And then you've got Bush on a 1-year contract, Hicks on a 2-year deal as he's aging as well. I think this is a great year to go out and get a linebacker like Edgerrin Cooper or someone else with the 54th overall pick. Finally, the cornerback and then the safeties. You got Denzel Ward, Martin Emerson, and Greg Newsome. I think this is one of the best cornerback rooms in the National Football League. They didn't play like it against the Texans the last time we saw them, but I'm not about to burn what was 17 good games beforehand because of one bad game in the playoffs. Now, there have been some trade rumors circulating around Greg Newsome, and I think I made my stance very clear at this point. I'm not interested in trading Greg Newsome. And, man, the L'Jarius Sneed trade really cemented that for me. L'Jarius Sneed is a better cornerback than Greg Newsome. And all it cost the Titans was a 3rd-round pick. What do you think you're getting for Newsome? His 5th-year option decision is coming up soon. So a team's going to have one cheap year in 2024 and then potentially pick it up for $13+ million. They're not going to be giving you a whole lot. So if you're not getting a good return, why not hold on to, I think we can say, a good player? Guy had 2 interceptions and 14 pass breakups last year. I'm not saying that Greg Newsome is the best cornerback in the National Football League, but he's a good player at a really important position that's had injury history, wink, wink, Denzel Ward, and you're in a win-now mode. I don't see how trading Greg Newsome for a 4th makes this football team any better. So, if you want to add to the stockpile of picks, I understand. But this is not a year to try and win in the draft by rebuilding. This is a year to get the best football team on the field for 2024. And I think that includes Greg Newsome. On to the safeties. Juan Thornhill and Grant Delpit hopefully come back 100%. Thornhill just battled a calf injury all year, and then Delpit got hurt, of course, the day he got his contract extension. But they bring back Rodney McLeod. You've got Ronnie Hickman and DeAnthony Bell. This might be Cleveland's strongest room. You got 5 players right there that you can make any starting combination with, and I think it's a really good combination, right? If it's Bell and Hickman, look at the way they played together against the Jets. I know it's the Jets, but those 2 guys combined for picks and interceptions and touchdowns. Rodney McLeod is a very reliable veteran safety that can stop the run, and he's not going to get burnt in coverage. So I like this safety room a ton. I don't think it needed any sort of revamping. You bring back McLeod for insurance, but you've got 2 really young backup safeties in Hickman and Bell that every single time they have stepped on the field, no one has been begging for them to get off the field or to get Thornhill or Delpit back ASAP. So how would you rate the Browns roster Madden style? Scale it 1 to 100. I would probably give the Browns roster an 88. I think that's probably about fair, right? We still have some question marks about, can Deshaun Watson get back to that 2020 Houston Texans form, what the linebacker room will look like for this team, but we're kind of pulling teeth here. All in all, this is one hell of a roster. All right, let's wrap up the show by picking a card. I got producer Cullen Brown yet again. What do you want to go with, Cullen?
We're going with 7 of clubs today.
7 of clubs? I like it. I'm going to go with the 9 of spades. 6 of clubs. Close. 6 of clubs. All right, boys and girls, we'll let you get back to the rest of your day, and we'll see you later.